For context, I am an artist and make drawings and little comics based on the campaigns I am playing in. Usually these will feature important or funny moments. Well, one of my characters is a goblin girl, a barbarian, who fell in love with the party's warlock, a human woman. So obviously I made a lot of comics and drawings of their confession and everything after because it's adorable. Usually people love these characters, but about a year or two ago, I received the weirdest comment. Breeding with goblins, unacceptable. I unsheath my flame-tongue longsword, plus 12 to hit, plus 7 to damage, 6 attacks in a turn with action surge. And don't try any funny business with magic. I've got a spell guard shield, a cloak of displacement, and a diverse team of heavily armed and highly educated heroes from the Purity Association to counteract that. Now step away from the snotling, and you may escape capital punishment. It's just so bizarre that my friends and I turned it into a copy pasta that we keep sharing whenever a human ex-goblin ship comes up. Anyway, I know this isn't really a typical horror story, but I figured I'd share it anyway because I think more people deserve to read this amazing copy pasta. It could be ironic, non-0% chance, but the funniest part is I received way more insane comments than that. So really, I think that's the true horror story, that people can just legitimately be that crazy. I know, quote-unquote, Daniel from high school, when we played Dungeons & Dragons together. He's our group dungeon master. Dude is a huge nerd. No judgment there. He's your stereotypical shy, sweet, wholesome, naive type. He met his husband, Michael, through a Discord server, if that tells you anything. Michael is very different from Daniel. He's more confident, outgoing, extroverted. He played football in high school while we were playing imaginary characters. He's also significantly more attractive and pays a lot more attention to his physical health, hygiene, and grooming. Thankfully, some of that spilled over to Daniel. He cleaned up the neckbeard and is eating some green food now. The thing is, Michael's now permanently in a wheelchair. For a while, he wasn't able to get out much. That's when he turned to Discord for a social life and met Daniel. Those two talked for years online. I was surprised when Daniel actually had the courage to get on a plane and meet a person. The rest is history. Now that you know the story, I can explain what I said. Our Dungeons & Dragons group was chatting, and it's an inside joke that we call Michael the Catfish, because for years, we hadn't seen his face, and well, you have to wonder. I said something like he had to hide his face because Daniel would have seen he's way out of his league and gotten nervous. Our friend Mandy said that comment was rude, and she didn't support that idea. I just tried to defend myself by saying they never would have met and been together if Michael hadn't become disabled. He wouldn't have needed the internet to make friends, and he wouldn't have to settle on Daniel. Clearly the wrong choice of words, and I apologized when the group demanded it, and I'm now being asked to leave our campaign? TLDR, my friend Daniel met his husband Michael on Discord. Michael was only online so much because he became disabled, so that's how they met. I'm being essentially kicked from our D&D group over this. Bro, that's not why you're being kicked from your D&D group. Alright, drumroll please. Yes, the a-hole. Seriously, dude, what the heck? That's not an okay thing to say. Maybe the catfish joke was less bad, still rude, but saying that these people never would have gotten married if one of them hadn't been disabled, that's a horrible thing to say. The comment about settling on his husband, not cool, man. Look, I say some mean things to my friends, but I have never even come close to saying anything along the lines of this. And also, in case you've forgotten, Daniel is the dungeon master. He runs the game, and I'm sorry, but he has the right to let you go if you are being incredibly rude like this, especially if the rest of the players agree on that judgment, and seemingly, it is something they agree on. You said these things, and now you want the result to be one way, but I'm sorry, man, it's the other way. the players in our story. Me, as me, Problem Person is our wizard, and my in-person friend is the rogue. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for about 8 years now, so this story takes place a little over a year ago now on a D&D Discord server. I joined the server 2 weeks into its creation, a good 9 months or so before the story. I watched it and the stories in the server world grow. The server did text leveling as well, so it could take a while from level to level. So I knew how the server operated, and by this point, I knew a lot of people. After playing a warlock on the server for a long while, I got a great story idea: to make a player character villain. A lot of the server's big in-character threats came from invasions to wars, etc. I talked with some friends on the server before character creation, some being mods at the time, and they liked the idea of eventually seeing an event like that. So I created my monk paladin villain. It started fine, with me mostly role-playing good player character stuff, while evil deeds were done on the side. As I grew in levels, 7 to 11, I started reaching out in the out-of-character chats as a character restart/redo killer. For those who lost interest in a character or didn't like something, they could have a fun narrative and have my villain dramatically kill off their character. That's actually kind of a sick service. You know, when I made my Warforged monk, I thought that playing a robotic checkout clerk would be a lot of fun. But turns out it's not. If only there was some way for me to create a dramatic exit for my player character without just having to randomly rely on death during combat. If only. Well, here at Villain & Sons, you're in luck. Our premier murder services will get rid of your character ASAP. Hell, if you pay us enough, we might even kill you! Thanks, Villain & Sons. Now I can reliably get rid of my characters in a way that will benefit the...
That is not up to the consumer. Villain & Sons is not responsible for how painful the death is. Terms and conditions may apply.
It all was going well until the problem wizard showed their face. They were also a person that had been in the server since the start. Now, in character, my villain had been a careful type. I genuinely took notes on all the things they prepared to not be traced back to, tracked by, you get the gist. Well, after a friend to Wizard roleplayed with me to get rid of a character, Wizard was now on the case to figure out what was up with their disappearance. Now, mind you, I had reset levels. I was down to mid-tier now. Wizard was still at 19th level with wizard resources, so when they metagamed some information about knowing certain details, this had to be stopped. Mods were brought in, and Wizard was mad due to not being able to track my villain down to kill/jail them. I showed my notes to the mods of all the care I took in my player character's plans, but now Wizard had it out for me. Quickly, the out-of-game character killer post I did was taken down, which was probably for the better. Glad that mess didn't grow any bigger, but now with Wizard constantly watching my player character's moves, it became annoying and overbearing. But then the rogue came into the story. Now, I was still running a hero versus villain story with someone else on the server, and I was able to get my friend Rogue interested and into the server himself. We chatted with the hero player and decided to have Rogue get an early start with being a monk/paladin, a scent assassin type. Everyone was down for it. After a couple of gaming days of the hero escaping again and again, eventually the rogue got lucky in one combat meant to drive the story for the battle with the villain, and won. We were all surprised and actually liked the change, but in comes Wizard. Argument ensues, and then the big outlandish claim from Wizard that I was also the player behind a rogue, that they were a fake account that I made to, well, they never clarified to what end I would do such a thing, but whatever. But then they started messaging me and Rogue to show proof that we both exist, being also very rude in their messages and even hostile towards Rogue. But to escalate this, they say that they were able to software check any evidence. So if any photos or proof is given, and they are edited or modified in any way, they could undo/redo any change and figure everything out that way. Well, that made me not want to show them anything anymore, even text between us, as now I couldn't edit out our names in fear that Wizard would undo the edits and go after the player. Wait, what, you actually believe them? So stating that to Wizard for obvious concern, now that our identities could be at risk, they grow more angry, more rude, so they want both of us to immediately join a voice chat, but we cannot do that either, as Rogue wasn't even online to begin with. They're at work right now, getting all those horrible messages from Wizard to see when they got off of work, telling Wizard this doesn't help at all. Wizard finally buzzes off as I recollect my thoughts. Now, the next day, I finally learned what Wizard sent to Rogue. Rogue was left crying and feeling horrible just for being caught in the crossfire. Rogue quits the server and Dungeons & Dragons, being done playing due to Wizard. So I DM Wizard and tear into them about this horrible behavior. I pull pictures of Rogue to show the mods. Mods are not at the scene. However, with both of us having mod friends, Wizard and I are kind of not ending up any better than each other. Mods only give Wizard a slap on the wrist, and I'm told to leave Wizard out of any more of my future villain stuff. I agree to this, and finally the Wizard relents. In the end, I just feel horrible for Rogue as they got caught in this crossfire and burned badly. As my villain character is trying to reach higher levels, I worry Wizard is still going to want to come through and ruin all my work. I have more server friends to help if Wizard is to return with this behavior, but I hope for everyone's sake, they do not. Right now, I'm trying to become a player in a group of relative strangers in Dungeons & Dragons, and it's probably going to be great, but on the off chance that it isn't, I'm ready to do the smart thing and leave. I told my therapist, what's the worst that can happen? Worst case scenario, I walk away. And I get that if you put a lot of effort into your villain character, you don't want to just abandon them, but at the same time, it's really not worth it to be stuck in a server where that sort of behavior is tolerated. Look, I'm sure the mod team are wonderful people, but frankly, if Wizard was threatening to do all this, that should be taken seriously. Even if I don't think they're actually capable of doing anything that they're threatening, that doesn't matter. Threats are taken seriously, whether or not I believe people have the ability to actually carry them out. It really looks like Wizard really wanted some kind of hero fantasy, which I've seen before on this very channel, some people trying to expose me through Reddit. And yeah, some people can take it a little bit too far. What started as just the hero fantasy in the game turned into a hero fantasy out of game, trying to expose you for making alt accounts and stuff. But look, you're not a hero. Put simply, you're just a dude playing a game, and that's alright. But don't pretend to be more than that, especially at the detriment of others. This happened during my second ever campaign as a player, following almost a year of forever DMing. I met this group on a D&D Discord server, and for the first few months, everything felt quite nice. Everyone had an equal par spotlight, encounters were fair, etc. I will be keeping character details to a minimum since they aren't really relevant to this issue. The problems only started appearing after the conclusion of said campaign. The Dungeon Master had proposed a continuation for the story, where we could either keep our characters or make new ones of equal level. Another player and I chose the latter and created new characters, both somewhat entangled in the plot that was going to unfold. During the first session, everything went smoothly until it was time for my old character to leave the party. The DM simply exclaimed, "He waves and leaves," with no chance for me to try and butt in as he immediately moved on. The second character that wished to leave the party got to stay for some time, had a few heartfelt goodbyes and a satisfying end to his adventure. Feeling a bit bitter, I managed to stay positive. I was quite excited to introduce my new character, and the Dungeon Master had assured me that he'd worked out the details on how they could be introduced. About half an hour of role-playing between the remaining player characters later, the second player's new character is introduced in a very plot-heavy scene and immediately cements himself as a valued party member by saving the entire party from falling off a cliff. Seeing as how well this had been done, I once again could not wait for my turn. That is, until the DM turned to me and said, "Your character is there on the ground and just saw all of that happen." Taken a bit by surprise, I nevertheless made the most of it and immediately had my character rush to investigate. I was met with complete silence, no one even deigning to reply to my attempts at roleplay, while the previously introduced player character immediately began shouting over everyone else that they needed to leave. The rest of the party eventually agreed with him and just went on their way, leaving my character there without having spoken much more than a sentence to them. And that was it. As much as the Dungeon Master tried to include my character in the next scene a few miles away, I made it known that considering the circumstances, I could not find any motivation my character would have to party with the other player characters. I simply came across some strangers, and as soon as they fell off that cliff, they were gone. The session ended soon after, and I've discussed things with DM, who was very apologetic, but I couldn't bring myself to try again. This has completely driven me away from the group I had genuine fun playing with. Even though I am the cut and run type, I think you could in theory give this another shot. I wonder why they were so hesitant to reintroduce your character, considering you claim to have had fun with them before. Clearly this group isn't a bunch of problem players, and the DM is seemingly good at their job, trying, though failing, to integrate you later on in the game. I think this was just a case of bad circumstance, maybe. Sometimes as a dungeon master, I mess up. I botch character introductions, I botch roleplay moments. It happens. And yeah, it sucks, but the best thing you could do is try at least one more time. Though, of course, if you want to leave this group because you're not having fun anymore, I totally get that, and I support that 100%. If you're not having fun, don't waste your time. Character introductions are a delicate art, and they can be really important. First impressions are important. We hear that all the time. But sometimes it just, doesn't work out. Back when I was 17, I finally decided to get into my first Dungeons & Dragons group ever. I'd played like one session of 1st or 2nd edition once with my dad when I was little, and I think I tried to run a session for some friends once, but they didn't take any interest. But other than that, my only experience was a great love of D&D-like computer games from BioWare. After a few failures at getting a group together from people I know, I went on the official Dungeons & Dragons forums to look for a group nearby, and managed to find one whose host was ex-military and whose husband was a submariner. They were basically a nuclear family, aside from her military experience. They were also pretty nice in general, and had a nice clean house and provided snacks. Flaky. The first session was great. I was playing a dwarven fighter and I hacked up some bandits who attacked us. Then we went to a town that had a bunch of missing people. Might have been a ghost town, I can't remember exactly. But we found a little girl there who led us to a spooky cave, or maybe it was a castle or something, where we found all the missing people dead and hung up on ropes like puppets. The little girl then started laughing evilly. As it turned out, she was a powerful vampire. And the hall we were in started to collapse as we fled. It was really engaging, and afterwards, the dungeon master, not the host, said that he actually pulled most of it out of his bum, which at the time I thought was impressive, but in hindsight could probably be a red flag. We had a few more sessions after that went pretty well, though I can't remember everything that happened. I remember a trap that was a total disaster for our cleric, who failed 3 saves in a row, and eventually my dwarf died fighting a naga by smashing a hole in the bottom of a giant raised stone pool of water it was using to hide from our attacks, and getting hit by all the debris and water inside when I succeeded on the save. I died horribly, but the naga no longer had its protection, and the party prevailed. They then found my new character in a cave connected to the pool. One day, the game master did not show up on time and eventually emailed the host, telling her he'd had car trouble and could not come. So, one of the other players ran a one-shot. The GM missed another session after that with a similar excuse. Then one day, he just didn't show up and did not send any messages. We waited for at least an hour, I think, before deciding it was too late to start a one-shot and called it quits. The next day, we received an email from him thanking the emergency rescue team for his emergency appendicectomy. See, I can pronounce things. It was an explanation and apology for this situation. I was in relief for a few hours until the host sent us an email with an attached message that she'd received from someone saying she was the DM's ex and that he was a compulsive liar, and we seemed like nice people, so she was sending this message to let us know for our benefit and his that he did not have an appendicectomy. He just wanted to get out of GMing, but didn't want to tell us. We never saw or heard from him again, which was kind of a pain because he was often my ride home. After that DM vanished, the player who ran the one-shot the first time he flaked out on us became the new dungeon master for the group and started a brand new story. I don't remember what happened in that one because I think we only had one session before he also stopped showing up, and the host later found out that he had joined another group at the same time slot at a local game store and didn't want to tell us. She said he was welcome to come back as a player, but not as a dungeon master, and finally she decided to GM herself. I get the feeling she was one of those forever GM types and was hoping to get to play for a while, which I guess she technically did, for a while. Anyway, second story, insert Apocalypse Now reference. I don't know, I've never seen the movie, but it seems appropriate. After losing 2 dungeon masters to flake outs in quick succession, and consequently 2 players, and with the host now DMing for us, she managed to find new players through the military friend's grapevine, and I brought one of my own friends from school who was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Again, this is before that term fell out of use. As well as my dad, who I think is probably autistic too, come to think of it, but I'm pretty sure I am as well, though I've never been diagnosed. That was very well a factor into the events that are about to happen in a way I did not perceive. Anyway, we filled the roster to like 5 or 6 players plus the host and DM. Aside from my dad and friend, there were 2 people who I remember for sure being there who the host had invited, and possibly one more as well, but only one of these 3 people factor into the story. Let's call him Walter. So, the new DM has escorting this human NPC from one town to another for reasons I can't remember. At one point, we ran across an injured dwarf on the road in the midst of a destroyed caravan. We helped him out and healed him, and then he asked us to help him try to retrieve something from the kobolds who attacked his caravan. We agreed to do so and went on a bit of a side tangent. I think we got it back, but we were ambushed by kobolds, and at that point, Walter made it clear that he wanted to try and get this dwarf NPC killed. I don't quite remember how exactly he did it, but I don't think it was like overtly violent. He succeeded though. We fled while that NPC was swarmed by kobolds. So that was a bit confusing because Walter's character was like good aligned. I don't remember if he was lawful or chaotic, but he was definitely good. The whole party was. He mentioned something about avoiding getting sidetracked from the objective. We continued on after that, and eventually we had almost arrived at our destination. We found a cart stopped in the road that was very colorful and had two fancily dressed kobolds sitting on it, and I think we're smoking like pipeweed or something. We were weary because of the hostile kobolds we just met, but these guys seemed different, and they greeted us in a friendly manner. From what I remember, we talked for a bit with no signs of hostility. Then, Walter walked up and attacked one of them, instantly killing him before knocking the other one into a dying state. We all yelled at him to stop and asked what was he doing before stabilizing the surviving kobold, and he said they were going to distract us from our mission, something about the kobolds we met earlier, and yeah, nothing that made any sense at all, since we made it clear that we were not going to be letting him kill the other kobold, who, as far as we could tell, was just a circus performer. We ended up carrying the unconscious kobold into town with us, and I think from what I remember, he convinced us to turn him into the town guard and lie about him attacking us or something ridiculous, but basically my halfling rogue was having none of it, so just grabbed the little guy and ran off into town with him and got separated from the party. The DM decided things were getting out of hand, and so sent like a divine servant or something to appear before me and tell me that it would protect the kobold from now on, so I don't have to worry about him anymore. I, ended up going back to the group. Meanwhile, Walter and my school friends' characters, they had gone shopping together. They met a shopkeeper, and Walter convinced him to show them his special inventory, which was downstairs in a hidden vault. As soon as the shopkeeper opens it, Walter tries to murder him. The DM asks my friend if he's going to do anything, and my friend was like, I'm taciturn. Which was a very not clear explanation of anything, but from what I can tell, he was just way too confused and overwhelmed by this guy's random acts of violence to even respond. It turns out, however, that the shopkeeper was actually a powerful mage of some sort, and he quickly put Walter on the back foot, telling him to leave immediately and never come back, and the same thing to my friend. So we were probably going to have to leave the town now. We asked him why he would do such a thing, and he said that it was so he could use the guy's inventory to help the rest of the party, which he apparently considered a good aligned action. After this, the DM had a private talk with him to try and get him to understand morality. From what I remember, he did sort of shape up, but it might have been because he didn't get any more opportunities to commit random, unjustified acts of violence. Instead, though, he started telling stories about his time in the field as special forces and describing violent acts in detail. One time I lost my crap and screamed at him and went on a rant about him acting like a psychotic murderer. We left, and later I was uninvited from the group, in person by the host, who came to my house to do it and everything, which may seem unreasonable, but well, they were both military, so I imagine she felt solidarity with him. I can imagine he was dealing with PTSD as well, or, hear me out, just like another I am super bad story in this video, he's probably just lying. I ended up playing exclusively online games from then on for like a decade, mostly on forums where I could just write up my character's actions, and if anyone did something I couldn't stand, I could just take the time to respond when I was collected. Now, typically, I would say that calling someone a psychotic murderer is kind of rude, but, he was happily calling himself a psychotic murderer, so, it's a choice. Look, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna wrap up this point here. If you call yourself a super cool, epic special forces or an elite hacker, I'm not gonna take you seriously. Ever. Not happening. Confidence is quiet, and people who describe themselves like that are typically not. Anyway, we've seen plenty of murder hobos before, it's nothing special. The real crazy story is, oh my god, the dungeon master who faked a not insignificant medical problem to get out of being a dungeon master, and then the follow-up dungeon master also bailing on the group. Like, look, it's okay, if you don't have time to DM, you don't have time to DM, tell your group that, but my god, the lengths some people will go to not have that conversation will never not shock me. Basically, the 2 lessons. Number 1, talk to people. Number 2, stop acting like a 12-year-old Call of Duty player. Simple as that. Alright, I'm about to head to bed, but time to record the outro. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Q and Play series, where we cover your questions in a rambling unscripted format while playing some video games. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tower for to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. You could just talk to them to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, then you can send them directly to us. There's an email in the description where you can send your stories to get a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to continue planning this year's cosplay, and until next time, farewell.